Hey guys, welcome to Two Guys and Hockey Talk. I believe we are in episode 14 of season 4. Hello, Pavel.
How you doing, Evan? I'm doing well.
Doing great. Well, we have a guest to introduce to you tonight. We've been talking about him for a little while. It took us some time to arrange the right date to get him on. Go ahead and introduce our guest here tonight.
We've got Liam Maguire, the best expert known to mankind. In a world full of 8 billion people, he knows more about hockey than you and I combined. Liam, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, boys. Thanks for having me, man. Great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. So we're going to get right started because I know we have quite a few questions to get through. We want to make sure we're going to promote some of the stuff you've got going on. But first, we always ask every question of our guests, what kind of brought you to the game of hockey? Like, was there a moment in the game that made you excited, or a moment you saw, or maybe you were playing the game?
No, I mean, I was a fan as far back as I can remember. I was born in Montreal, and my first memories in living in a little village north of Quebec City called Stoneham, where my mother is from. And we were there as a family, myself, my 2 younger brothers, my mom and dad. And I just remember hockey night in Canada. Of course, it didn't start till 8:30 in those days. This is mid-1960s. And I was pretty young, but when I was in grade 1, Dad would let me watch the end of the first period. The game would start at 8. The broadcast wouldn't start till 8:30. So you'd catch the last 10 minutes of the first. I couldn't do it during the week, but on Saturday night, he would let me. I was just enthralled watching the guys skate on TV. And, I kind of got hooked just as a boy, and the snowball started rolling down the hill, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and I became a pretty big fan. We moved here to the Ottawa area in the rurals south of Ottawa in 1966. I was 7, and things really took off when I attended elementary school here, St. Leonard's. That was a jumping off point for me in a big way.
Wow, that is so awesome. So, just if you're joining us here tonight, guys, on Two Guys and Hockey Talk, we have the world's #1 NHL historian, trivia expert. He's also written many books. His 4th book is now available, The Real Ogie. We'll talk about that in a little while. Now, just a little history on Liam so he doesn't have to brag on himself. He has worked countless events, coast to coast, Canada and the U.S. For you, those in Europe, maybe you just need to invite him over if you're following tonight. He's worked these events with Hall of Famers, Wayne Gretzky, Bobby Orr, Gordie Howe, Rocket Richard. That would have been a dream for me. Jean Beliveau, Lafleur, Bossy. I mean, there's people that I'm sure that you could tell us about that I'm not even mentioning. And you've done a lot of work, obviously, with things like on the hot stove type Q&A with people. So if you're with us here tonight and you have some questions around history and you want some answers, why don't you challenge the historian here tonight? And maybe we'll give you a chance and we'll pop it up for Liam. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on our show here. Now, we do specifically try to get out the information so where people can follow you. We do know we have it up here for people to follow on Twitter. Sounds like you were saying that's the #1 place for hockey. And also LinkedIn. Yeah. Is there anywhere else we can follow you?
Well, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. Okay. Very easy to find on all of them. There's, of course, like it is for all of our names, there are multiple people in the world named Liam Maguire. But if you do a little sleuthing on any of those platforms with hockey has the subtext title, whatever you want to call it, I'll come up there pretty quickly. And if you happen to come across that and you want to fire off any question or make any comment, I reply to absolutely everybody. And always pleased to hear from hockey fans, no matter what the topic, subject, conversation, debate, whatever it is. I'm happy to talk to every single hockey fan.
I think you need to change your name on Facebook and everywhere else to the #1 historian of NHL hockey news, right? The Hockey Insider, the true one. That way people actually know
the true NHL Insider. Yeah, there you go. All right. Go ahead.
Well, that's I think Darren and Elliot and those guys have the insider locked up pretty good. But and they're all friends of mine, every one of them, all the media guys who have any tenure in Canada. I've met them all. I know most of them, and I consider most of them friends. But what I do is a little bit different. And there isn't, Pavel may have said it a little bit tongue-in-cheek, 8 billion people. There's nobody on the planet drawing a breath can do what I can do.
Woo!
Nobody.
All
Nobody.
right. Okay. Let me just throw something out. This is not a part of any script that I have for you. We had Leah Hextall, the first full-time play-by-play NHL announcer, on the show for our second to start the season. We were working to get her on last year. Can you name the very first female NHL play-by-play to ever call a game?
No.
Whoa.
You've already got him stumped. Oh my goodness.
Liam's like, what?
Softball.
Okay, the reason
I
is because I can't.
one away with all. I don't do play-by-play trivia.
I was gonna say I came off the ice, everyone, and I actually went up into the play-by-play box, so that can't be held against Liam. All right, well let's get to a question that I've been dying to ask here. Now you have this huge passion and talent for storytelling and writing, just to the point where you've obviously published now 4 times with your recent book, The Real Ogie: The Life and Legend of Goldie Goldthorpe. Now, that it sounds like it was forwarded by Bob Costas. What got you into writing, and writing specifically about hockey, though?
Well, hockey was going to be my thing for sure. I mean, I've dabbled a couple times in the past about doing a book on my experiences. You mentioned a small group of some of the Hall of Famers I've worked with. That number is up to actually 65. Sadly, of course, some of them have passed away, including most recently the last 12 months, right? We've had a devastating last 12 months in the world of hockey. And a couple of guys like Guy Lafleur was a very close friend. And that April 22nd, 2022 is going to resonate with me for a long time. So I dabbled in writing a book of my experiences with those guys, some of the places I worked with them and some of the events, and then break down a little bit of what I feel are some of their more significant historical and anecdotal and statistical accomplishments. But at the end of the day, I fell back on hockey trivia and did 3 hockey trivia books because trivia, hockey trivia, NHL trivia is in the history. And then I've morphed into the history more so in the last 15, 18 years, gotten away a little bit from some of the hardcore stats because it's gotten to the point where you have to try and find the line, what really is something that is worthwhile for me to remember that I can regurgitate at a later basis and maybe expand on and tell what they call the rest of the story. And so that's what I did. My first 3 books were, especially my second and third books, where I really feel I have the most comprehensive hockey trivia books. And there's been many, many written. I'm one of many authors to pen a hockey trivia book. But my 4th one, I took a real leap, man. I wrote a guy's life story, and that's a different thing altogether. So that was quite a project.
It's good to know that there's a possible career for learning hockey knowledge, because sometimes I learn it and my wife says, "What's the point of this?" Or even my parents say, "What are you going to do with this information?" And here I have justification for a role model who became successful. So this is brilliant. But
if Liam can do it, you can do it.
Exactly. I have highest.
If I can do it, anybody can do it. Absolutely. All you got to do is just get up on a stage, take a microphone in front of a live crowd, and take on all comers.
So you've had an extensive career, and it's spanned over across a broad ways of communicating with the world. So you've been on podcasts, you've been on television, you've written, as we just alluded to. What kind of goes into the day-to-day for you to practice, and what drives you and motivates you to be the best of the best? Because you are a leader in not only in the hockey world, but in general in media and journalism, from some of the people we reached out to.
It all happened pretty organically, really, to be honest with you. And I started doing gigs. That's really what we call them, right? In the industry, in the business, 41 years ago. My first one was on May 21st, 1981. I did 2 hours on radio. I got paid $75 on radio station CFRA here in Ottawa on Hal Anthony, the late Hal Anthony's show. And I was already a fanatic. I was a fan. I played my whole life. I played as a kid. I played it right through adult years. And I only quit playing league hockey about 15 years ago. I play pickup now. didn't want to go out at 11 at night anymore and have some guy hack me because he thinks he's going to the show in a 30 and 40 and over league. You know, it's the stupidest thing. Anyway, I coached my son for 13 years as well. Every game that he played, from IP, the initiation program, right up to major midget. So I live, sleep, eat, and breathe hockey. It's what I am, and it's what I do. And when I go to gigs, you cannot afford to have I feel anyway, in the 3,000 plus that I've done since 1981, I've never had an off night. Doesn't mean you answer them all. I've never claimed that.
Yeah.
I make 2 claims. I can answer 90% of all NHL historical or trivia questions regarding the game off the top of my head, and that's one claim. And the second claim is nobody's sitting down across the table from me and beat me one-on-one. No, nobody while I'm drawing a breath. So that's where I hang my hat. And when you say that, and you say that in Canada, and you go from Vancouver to St. John's and all places in between, because I've traveled this country coast to coast, and you roll in there, man, you're the gunslinger. You're the gunslinger coming in, because every single village and every town and every city has a guy. And you have to deal with that, and especially pre-internet, those that led to some really interesting nights. Obviously now with the internet, and especially with social media, it has shrunk the world. And I don't really get those challenges that much anymore. But I get tons of people asking me questions, and look, like I said, you can't get them all. Never claimed that I could, but it's a fun thing. You said it earlier, Pavel. Well, it's useless information. It really is, except in my case, I've made a living out of it.
Oh,
exactly.
No.
I pay my mortgage by answering who won the Stanley Cup in 1924. You know, I mean, that's what I do, man.
Before I go to my next question, so Allison says, I know you got to study up for 2 guys, Pavel, because as Evan says, you know nothing about hockey. So we know how much harder it must be for Liam. Okay, Liam, let me get into let me throw an actual question out, because I don't know the answer to this. So the 4 Stanley Cups of the New York Islanders, and previous to that, I believe it was 5 Stanley Cups with the Montreal Canadiens.
Yes,
straight in their dynasty. What were the dominant line for the Islanders during that time, and what was the dominant line for the Canadiens?
Well, the Islanders, of course, sadly, we've lost 2/3 of them this year, right? Just as we discussed there, with Gillies and Bossy both passing away. And I tell you,
Gillies, that was the one.
Utter devastation at Clark. Gillies was so sudden and so fast. Brian Trottier was their centerman, and they went by the nickname the Trio Grand. They followed up. Mike Bossy came along. He replaced Billy Harris. They were originally was Trottier, Gillies, and Billy Harris, and they were called the Long Island Lighting Company. And then when Billy got moved and Bossy came along, they became Trio Grand, and that was their primary offensive line. But when you think of the Sutters and guys like John Tonelli and their foot soldiers, I mean, Bobby Nystrom, and even their first captain, Eddie Westfall, Denis Potvin on D, Billy Smith and Ned, and they had so much support on that roster. It was unbelievable. 19 consecutive playoff series wins. Wow. No one will ever beat that. And it now benefited, of course, by having 4 rounds of playoffs, unlike talking about the 1950s Montreal Canadiens. Now, their number 1 line, again, you'd probably have to classify it as 1A and a 1B. You had Henri Richard, Dickie Moore, and Rocket Richard in the latter part of those 5 years. You had, in the early part of the 5 years, you had Bert Olmsted, Jean Beliveau, and Boom Boom Geoffrion. So and you had a little bit of mix and match, all depending, because the Rocket, his last 3 years, he actually missed a lot of games with injuries. He had put a lot of weight on, and frankly, it's what led to his, what I still think historically in hindsight, is premature retirement, even though he was 39. Yeah. I think he could have played at least another year or 2, but he just had so much trouble keeping the weight off. But I think at the end of the day, most Habs fans historically would anoint the Rocket as being whatever line he was on as the number 1 line whenever he played, even though statistically he wasn't putting up the numbers
Yeah.
But, I mean, you had Dickie Moore won back-to-back scoring championships with Montreal playing on that left side. And you had Henri Richard, who was emerged as the number 2 center behind Jean Beliveau. And then you had the Rocket. So you want to split hairs, say Beliveau's line. You want to say Henri Richard's line. To me, the 50s Habs that won the 5 straight cups, I think they had a 1 and a 1A in terms of top 2 lines.
Wow.
But unbelievable team, to say the least. I mean, they were in 10 straight finals and won 6 cups, 5 in a row. So pretty big stuff.
In all fairness, there is a lot less teams too. But let's move on. So Yvan Cournoyer, former captain of the Canadiens, 10-time Stanley Cup winner. You noted at some point, and you have this listed in on your page, that there's nobody on the planet who knows more about history, stats, trivia in the NHL than yourself. Now, first of all, that's super impressive given the long history of the NHL. But could you just maybe share off the top of your head a few wild facts about the NHL, maybe very few people are even aware of?
I'll tell you a couple things, I guess. For one, the Stanley Cup. I mean, let's start there. It's the trophy that they all play for. I mean, that's not the real name of the trophy. But the Stanley Cup is a nickname of the trophy. It was a Dominion Cup of Canada. Is the original name of the bowl, as it was christened and built in England in 1892 for approximately 50 guineas, I believe it was. It was $48.67. They say conversion, such as it was at the time in 1892, was brought over to Canada and awarded to the Montreal Amateur Athletic Association in 1893, and then competed for the first time in 1894. The Governor General, Earl of Derby, Sir Frederick Arthur, Lord Stanley is the man who had the trophy commissioned. So after approximately 4 or 5 years, it was nicknamed the Stanley Cup. So I think that's something that surprises most people, because everybody, regardless of what level of hockey fan you are, from 0.5 up to a 10, everybody's heard of the Stanley Cup. And I think when you tell them that it's not actually the official real name of the trophy, that's usually a good place to start. The NHL came along 25 years later. So the Stanley Cup was awarded for 25 years prior to the formation of the NHL. And then the NHL came along. You still had, even when you won the NHL, between 1918 and 1926, you did not win the Stanley Cup. You had to compete against 2 other leagues in Canada for Stanley Cup supremacy. That's why you had, for example, the team in 1925 to win the Stanley Cup was the Victoria Cougars, who were from the Pacific Coast Hockey League. And they were the last non-NHL team to win the Stanley Cups. So in the early days, I mean, you had so much history in terms of how everything originated and unfolded. I mean, the Hart Trophy started in 24, the Lady Byng in 25, the Vezina in 27. And so you started to get some individual awards. The first Calder Award came in 1933. It became the Calder Trophy in 1937. It became the Calder Memorial Trophy in 1943 when Frank Calder passed away, who was the original president of the National Hockey League. He was the secretary-treasurer of the National Hockey Association, and he assumed the presidency of the NHL when it started in 1917. So that's just scratching the surface.
He just assumed it? He just took it over?
And he was asked. Okay. I feel like I phrased that incorrectly. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it, but they pretty much said, look, we need you. Like the NHL, the NHA folded because they couldn't get rid of the owner in Toronto. The owner in Toronto was a guy named Eddie Livingston, who
he was a nightmare.
Owners, some things never change, right? They wanted Toronto out. Eddie Livingston said, "You can't get me out. You can't get me out legally. I'm not resigning. I'm not quitting. I'm not selling." So they walked across. This is all true story. They walked across the hallway, the Windsor Hotel in downtown Montreal, and they said, "What are we going to do?" And Frank Calder said, "The only one thing you can do, guys, dissolve the league. Dissolve the league, start a new league without him. Simple as that." So all in favor, they took a vote. The NHA ceased to be right there. It went from 1910 to 1917, and that was it for the National Hockey Association. They said, okay, What are we going to call ourselves? Someone suggested the National Hockey League. All in favor? That's how the NHL started. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. They walked across the hotel room and said, that's it for the NHA. We're getting rid of Eddie Livingston. And the NHL started. And she's been rocking and rolling ever since.
I think that was I read that book. I read that story in the first season by Bob Duff or something like that, if I recall. That was kind of
Bob
one of the
Duff
books.
is a real sharp cat and great writer. He's out of the Windsor area, Detroit.
Yeah.
Covers the Red Wings. And when Stan Fischler's, I believe it was his last hockey encyclopedia, he wrote a number of versions of it.
Yeah.
But the last one that I think came out in 1983, Bob Duff did a lot of the background, a lot of the heavy lifting on that.
Yeah, I agree. So anyways, great book for people if they want to check it out. But as an aside, if people today complain about Gary Bettman and want to boo him, they don't know the chaos that Eddie Livingstone brought to the NHL. Like, it was a madhouse. It was so in disarray that it was chaotic. So as an aside, you know, you've studied hockey for a very long time. It has a very rich and deep culture and history, and there's a lot of events that have happened. Are there a few moments to you that stand out as the most iconic? Now, more younger fans would recognize Sidney Crosby's golden goal at the Olympics in Canada, in Vancouver. Maybe people from the 70s and 80s would recognize more so Bobby Orr's goal, you know, and how he scored and then did that jump and that famous image. Anything earlier? Any moment in hockey that really like stood out to you? One of the ones that I really stood out to me, and I'm sure Evan would appreciate, is Mario Lemieux coming back from cancer treatment, you know, battling it all, and then coming and being a force again on the ice after going through all like the heaviness that is cancer, you know, because we're doing Hockey Fights Cancer right now. Sorry, I'm yapping on. But Liam, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, those are great ones. Obviously, both Mario's games when he came back from the injury in '93 and passed LaFontaine, and when he came back after his retirement, that first game against Toronto. Then both what he did for the rest of the time that he stayed with Pittsburgh as well, right through Sidney Crosby starting, right? So, but in terms of singular moment, let's be honest, I'm a little bit older than you guys, and there's nothing bigger ever, nor will there be, than Paul Henderson's goal in '72. I mean, it's a seminal moment in the history of the sport. It's the most impactful goal in the history of the sport. It's the goal that had created the largest groundswell change in the history of the sport.
Wow.
So Henderson's goal stands above and on everybody's shoulders. Then you can factor in the rest, and probably Sid's in 2010 would be number 2. Then you get into maybe Eruzioni's against the Russians in '80, and you get into a bunch of others, you know, that Sittler's in '76, the first Canada Cup in overtime, and Sittler's 10-point game. And things of that nature. I mean, watching some of the stuff Wayne Gretzky did, obviously, and Wayne and Mario in '87, the '87 Canada Cup, that show they put on, specifically Game 3. If you're talking singular moments, you're talking about a series of games that I think you kind of sort of loosely alluded to with Mario coming back from cancer, that time period when he came back and what he did. Then you can kind of broaden your scope and your answer. But if you're talking a singular moment in time, Thursday afternoon, September 28, 1972, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the 1926 mark of the third period, the entire hockey world changed forever when that goal was scored.
Wow. That's facts drop. So I'm going to throw another trivia one quickly because I've always been curious about this. Has there ever been a game in mostly the modern era, but could have been older, where there has not been a whistle drawn in a period, let alone a game? Whether or not it was for an icing, offside, like you start with a puck drop and first 20 minutes, then maybe first 40. Because I've always wondered, I've never looked it up. Has there ever been a moment like that?
There's no way to look it up. I mean, they actually have tracked that in the last 20 or 25 years. And there was a game, I think it was around 07 or 08, St. Louis Blues were playing. It might have been against Vancouver, but there was a stretch of time when 14 minutes without a whistle, which they say since they started tracking this is the longest stretch of time without a whistle. Now, there was a game played back in the day, I believe in in the early 40s between Chicago and Toronto, I believe, that was played in an hour and 35 minutes. That's a 60-minute game, including intermissions. There was no goals and there were no penalties. It was 0-0 penalty free. And they call it the fastest game ever played in 60 minutes in NHL history in terms of elapsed real time.
Wow.
So that's the best I can tell you because there's no other definitive. Yeah. See, here's part of the problem with that question is, and I see this a lot online, right? Either people come to me, either they send me a message or it's put out there on a tweet or something, and people say, hey, I want to talk about this particular stat or debate or something. And I said, okay, what's your criteria? All-time NHL. I say, you realize NHL started in 1917, okay? Yeah. Like, there are no videos. And so you want to talk about, like, Howie Morenz and Eddie Shore and Newsy Lalonde and Cy Denneny and Joe Malone. These guys played 60-minute games. Like, it was not uncommon for no whistle for minutes and minutes and minutes on end. So who knows if they set a record or not? Nobody timed that back then. It was never timed.
Wow.
So you have to be specific in terms of both the question and the answer. And that's all I can tell you is that right now, if you go online, you Google it, you'll see they say since they started timing these things that the longest stretch without a whistle is 14 minutes. And the quickest game, which in elapsed time, is, I believe, an hour and 35 minutes. And that's back in the
Wow.
That's great. I mean, it was a side question. It was a curveball. And I did try to specify that it was modern day because it's hard to navigate and kind of determine that because they didn't have that technology, or let alone maybe those records aren't there. So I can understand. But Evan, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it is interesting because it is hard to keep track. I mean, of so many things in the modern day era. It's even like what's a pure statistic now, right? Of even assists when they only tracked one assist before as opposed to two. What would the numbers have been different? I know they have all their.
First year they tracked none, and then they started tracking assists, and they said, "Well, let's give 3." They gave 3 assists.
No, what years was that?
1920, I believe. 1920 and 2021. I believe they tracked. They had 3 assists for a period of a couple of years in the early 20s, and then they rescinded it back to 2 because there was only 2 refs on the ice in those days. They operated both as linesmen and referees. Yeah. And they, of course, there was no red line, and it was a different game, but still, they couldn't remember who the last guy left to get one assist left.
Okay, well, I'm gonna take you back to another question that's been rumored. We don't have the exact date set up right now, but Glenn Ringdahl has actually agreed to come on our show, and so he's the former vice president of the Vancouver Canucks. He was there during the Brian Burke, Pat Quinn days, and also during the time that it was rumored, and I know been some things written. Now, we've heard some background information that could be different. What do you know? Was Gretzky actually possibly going to the Vancouver Canucks? Did you hear anything? What do you know about actual facts?
I've read a bunch of stuff in terms of actual facts, and I've sat down and had multiple beers with Wayne, and I never actually put that question right to him directly, to be honest with you. I mean, the famous story, of course, the backgammon game and how close he was to becoming a Winnipeg Jet. That's the only one I think that has any validity.
Okay, can you come back to that right now? I don't know of that one. I don't think our fans do either.
Yeah, well, there was the story goes that before Nelson Scalabania played Peter Pocklington in that infamous backgammon game on a plane, 40,000 feet in the air, they were trying to come to terms over Pocklington acquiring Wayne Gretzky from what was then the Indianapolis Racers in the WHA. Pocklington owned the Oilers, and Scalabania owned Indianapolis. He's the guy who signed Wayne to a personal services contract when Wayne was 17. And Wayne played, I believe it was 8 games there, I think. It was a very low number. And at any rate, they tried to make a deal they being Indianapolis and Scalbania, with the Winnipeg Jets. This is 100% validated.
Okay.
And the Jets turned it down. They turned the deal down. They had an option they could have got Wayne Gretzky in the WHA, mind you, but still.
Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't have mattered, because when those 4 teams came to the NHL, as you guys probably know, they were all allowed 2 priority selections. So Winnipeg ended up taking, I believe, was Morris Lukowitz and I think either Peter Marsh, not sure who the other guy was, but and Edmonton, of course, kept Gretzky, and I think it was Bent Gustafsson at the time. I think was their second guy, who they ended up dealing to the Washington Capitals. But Winnipeg could have had Wayne Gretzky. I never heard any validation that Vancouver was actually in the mix.
So yeah, we're going to know soon in the new year here.
2 fan bases tonight.
Yeah. So one of the things that so Glenn Ringdahl, who was actually the vice president back there, I've heard through rumors, so I don't know if he will share or not off the record or on the record, that it was a time deal that was set for Vancouver, and their guy that was the accountant messed up on the time zones and was not paying attention. Don't know how this works. Don't know how much. Let's just say I have really, really, really close sources that I'm hoping Glenn will be able to confirm or deny. We'll see with us when he comes on the show. So anyway, it should be interesting. We've heard a few different things.
What year was this supposed to have happened?
Oh, the year he was traded to LA. So the year he was supposed to be traded to LA, something fell through in the deal with Vancouver. I'm hearing it had to do with the person getting back on the contract, had to do with the time zone issue. Wherever this was, not sure exactly, but something happened. So anyway, we're going to find out. So you know what? If I find that out and there's something real to it, and we know there's facts that we can get, I will actually personally email you so you can add that to your trivia questions. So, okay. So I just want to kind of bring attention here. We know you're an ardent supporter of the Canadian military, local law enforcement, and of course our first responders. So we do just want to take a moment to acknowledge and applaud all the work that they do, regardless of wherever they are. We just want to thank them for the job that they do. And thank you for working with them and supporting them as well.
I appreciate that. I speak here for our local police on a number of different levels and endeavors and different fundraising initiatives and whatnot. And I'm a huge supporter of the paramedics and the firefighters, and I'm a massive supporter of the military, home and abroad, past and present. So it's a big part of what I champion in my life is to salute those people and what they do. They're all heroes to me. Every man and woman that's done that, has done it, and continues to do it are significantly important in my life and have been. And so I do every chance I get. I certainly champion their efforts.
Awesome.
I'm going to throw up a question. I don't know if you know this question. What's the most blades that have been lofted off skates in a game?
No idea.
Okay, look at the questions that brings these people out of the. And unfortunately, we know this person. They've been a co-host actually with us in the past. So thanks, Hill, trucking down in Coachella Valley tonight. Hey, welcome. But Liam's not even going to answer that question because that's about blades. It's not about a player.
So we'll give you an easy one, and maybe Zilstra will want to engage in this one. Who is on your Mount Rushmore? Top 4 players ever to play the game.
Yeah, chronologically, I'll give it to you is Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux. It's a no-brainer to me. Okay. And I break it down this way. Gordie Howe did something nobody in hockey, I don't believe in sports, has ever done. He was in the top 5 in scoring for 20 consecutive years.
Wow.
Not the top 10, the top 5 from 1949 to 1969. And he wasn't just hanging around looking available. He actually won 6 Art Ross trophies. He won 6 Hart trophies. He's a 4-time Stanley Cup winner. And for a period of a few years, you could make the claim he was a heavyweight champ with the gloves off too. So That's Gordie Howe. Bobby Orr obviously revolutionized the game. I think he's the greatest singular individual talent that I've certainly ever witnessed in my life. What he did as a player statistically had no equal in his day. He was the first guy with 6 consecutive 100-point seasons, 8 straight Norris trophies, and everything else that he accomplished, plus 124 in 1971. Wayne Gretzky retired, holding or sharing 61 records. He tore apart the record book, as we well know. 92 goals, 215 points. Played 20 years, had 15 100-point seasons, 4 200-point seasons, won everything there was to win. And Mario Lemieux, I think you can make the case, is the greatest individual talent of any forward that's ever played. And I mean, everything Wayne was, Mario was right there behind him. Wayne scored 92, Mario scored 85. Wayne had a 51-point streak. Mario was 46. Wayne had 4 200-point seasons. Mario had 199. Wayne won 4 cups. Mario won 2. They had the phenomenal magic they created 9th September of 87. I'm so thankful that they got together then and gave us that unbelievable thrill, those 3 games against Russia. And that's my Mount Rushmore. I don't think there's nobody in that top 4 that's beating out those 4 guys.
So, and I like kind of the reasoning behind it. So let me counter argue what some people would say on that, and then I'll let you rebuttal here. So some people will say Bobby Orr didn't play long enough to actually be considered that high. Obviously, he was in the years he did play, but longevity is a part of it, right? So if Alexander Ovechkin wasn't pushing for Gretzky's goals, he probably wouldn't be up there because of his longevity. So, and then the other question is, Mario and Gretzky played in a time that people believe was the poorest defense in history, including some of the worst goalies averages, not just save percentages, but like literally goals against average way back then. How would you rebuttal those two?
Well, rebuttal, first of all, Ovi is probably the greatest one-dimensional player that I've ever seen. I mean, he's unbelievably durable. He's missed 47 games in his career, and he's going to take a real rip at Wayne's record here. But I wouldn't even have him in my top 15 overall players. So, he's the greatest goal scorer that I've anointed him that for the last couple of years ahead of Mike Bossy and Rocket Richard and a few others. But I think he more than deserves that credit. But overall hockey player, no. I mean, look at him this year. They're going to parade him out for the next 3 years. Washington will not play another playoff game in his time. He's already a minus $1 billion this season. He's going to be minus 30 or 40 by the time this season's done, and nobody cares. Right now it's all about 894 with him. And that's fine. Yeah. But on the Mount Rushmore, anybody who would have Ovi in the Mount Rushmore really doesn't know the sport. I mean, you got to determine what your criteria is. You're talking overall hockey player. He's absolutely not even close to being there. Bobby Orr, and here's where the thing is. You just said it. So it goes back to specifics. When you say Mount Rushmore, are you talking, you got to be specific. If Bobby Orr doesn't meet your qualification because you only had really legit 10 seasons, then you gotta probably point that out at the start and say you want somebody that's played at least 15 years, because what Bobby did within 66 to 76 really was enough to make the Mount Rushmore really of any historian that I've ever come across. But when you bring on social media and millions of people can just pick up a phone and put in their thoughts, and most of them couldn't skate from here to the stove and don't know a puck from a basketball, and they're the ones who are going to say Orr's career wasn't long enough to be there, I don't put a lot of stock in it.
The one counter I would have is what discourages you from putting a goalie on your Mount Rushmore, or would they be fifth? Because as you know, throughout history, goalies, it's such a select position, and within a team, there's several forwards and defensemen, and you can move. It's not as black and white like that, but there's 3 forwards, 2 defensemen, but there's only 1 goalie, and it's usually 1 for a whole team. There's 32 teams. There's really, now you have backups, 1A and by Bs, but you have Jacques Plante, you have Patrick Waugh, You have Dominic Hasek. You know, you've had Martin Brodeur, and I'm talking more modern. That's what I grew up on. But would you consider putting a goalie on your Mount Rushmore, or would they be fifth? Because just it's hard to replicate that position or that role in elite numbers.
Listen, first of all, let's be honest. You know, Pavel or Evan, you guys are more than entitled, as we all are, to pick our Mount Rushmore. I give you my opinion. I'm 63 years old. I've been working in the industry for 41 years, and I've got memories of the game, active memories of the game going back to 1965. And I've met most of these guys, and I've watched over 1,000 games live, and I've worked 3,000 gigs. So I think I have some validity to what I say. Yeah. At the end of the day, both your opinions are worth, and anybody else who's watching right now, are worth every bit as much as mine. And if you think a goalie or should be there, or you think Bobby Orr should not be there, no problem. I'll still buy the next round. I'm good to go. It's no worries. To me, I don't have a goaltender that's in the top four. My top four goalies are Patrick Waugh, Dominic Hasek, Marty Brodeur, and Terry Sawchuk. That's post red line coming in 1944. Because prior to 44, the rules were so different and things were so different. I can't take I can't take Clint Benedict or an Al Connell or George Hainsworth or any of these guys as good as they were. Even Bill Durnan. Yeah. I think those four qualify as my top four. And I would have all four of those guys as hockey players in my top 20. But I don't have any of them in my top four. Man, your Mount Rushmore has got to be pretty select, man. And I don't know how, and you talked earlier about the scoring in the 1980s. It's interesting right now. The goals per game right now is the highest it's been in like almost 30 years. But Wayne Gretzky finished 65 points or more ahead of the second person in scoring for 6 consecutive years. Like, if it was that porous, why didn't everybody do it? Like, what Wayne did and then what Mario did transcended regardless of how much scoring was. I mean, that's just idiotic for anybody to look at that and just say, when you look at some of the goals that go in hockey today, that puck goes right through these guys. And they're wearing enough, they look like Michelin men out there. And pucks are still going through them. So the goaltending was pretty bad in the 80s, but guess what? It's pretty bad right now, too. And it's true. I tell you what, it's no, you're not taking anything away from Wayne and Mario and what they did. Where it definitely had an impact on some of the guys, like Bernie Nichols had 150-point season in 88, 89. He played half the season, every power play with Wayne. I mean, some of these guys, some of the other guys, even, maybe Bossy's 147 points. Those things probably don't happen if it's in another era. But you parachute Wayne in anywhere, and he's finishing 50 points ahead of anybody playing.
Well, and that's the thing, right? You compare Bossy compared to the other goal scorers and how much further ahead he was. That when you do that, it changes everything. Like I've had people, really liking what McDavid is doing and feeling, and you know what? He's going to be right up there probably. But he doesn't have that separation still, as good as he is and as credible of a superstar. He doesn't have that separation. And, I'm with you. At least for my top two, it's Gretzky and Lemieux. And I don't know if that can ever be touched. And all you got to do is even go back and look at them in junior. Those records in junior will never be touched. Like right now, we're setting WHL records for age for Connor Bedard. He's even in the WHL of all places, I mean, which is a defensive league. And he's lighting it up more than McDavid did in the OHL at the same age.
If Wayne Gretzky had have played in the OHA, was the OHA when he started, became the OHL. Yeah. If he had played junior till he was 19 years old, he would have scored 350 points.
Wow.
He would have scored 5 to 6 points a game had he played junior at 18 or 19. He played 1 year junior at 16, and he had 180 points. I mean, you factor that guy in the World Juniors at 19 years old or something. Instead, he's in the NHL scoring 137 points in the NHL. I mean, what would he have done in junior? He would have scored over 350 points. Believe me, I went and saw him play when he came with the Sioux to the 67s. I went with a good
Oh,
buddy
wow.
of mine. He ended up being my best man, and I was his best man. His name's Gordie Howe. And we went, and I said, let's go see this kid, man. We got to see him live. And we were in the Civic Center and watched him come in. And they did a showdown at the end of the first intermission, him and Bobby Smith. They finished 1-2 in scoring that year in the OHA. And Bobby Smith set the record. Still is the record for most points. Bobby was 19. Wayne was 16.
Yeah.
And I never seen anything like it. And then when first time he came to Montreal as a pro in January 1980, I went to that game, the Montreal Forum, and I watched him play. Now, he didn't have a great game that night. Lafleur outshone him. But, man, you could see stuff see what McDavid's doing now.
That's
or what
crazy.
McDavid's done in his career, stuff that he's done. No, I've never seen anybody do. I've never seen anybody go laterally with the puck like that. I've never seen anybody with his speed carrying the puck. I've never, ever seen that in my lifetime. That's just my own opinion. I've never seen it. What Wayne did when he came up, late 70s, NHL 79-80, we didn't see much from the WHA. Not many of those games were broadcast here in Ottawa. We had a team in Ottawa, 2 teams, but we didn't see much. Anyway, what Wayne did, I'd never seen before either. I'd never seen anybody go to the blue line and button hook back. I'd never seen anybody go behind the net. I never saw anybody with his vision. So, you're talking about special guys, man.
You know,
that hockey IQ is something that's very unique to those elite best of the best players, right? Those that the cream of the crop. Let's go ahead, Evan.
I know. I was gonna say if I could pick a line, a dream line to throw together, and they could all play in their prime at the same time, mine would be seeing McDavid, Bure, and Lemieux all on the same line. I mean, that would be hilarious. I'd feel bad for they could play 3-on-5. I think.
Pavel is such an incredible player, and had Vancouver managed to find a way to win Game 7 in '94, he would have won the Conn Smythe Trophy. There's no doubt about it in my mind. But I'll never forget his quote that summer, and it really, at the time, nobody read into it. Had social media been around that time, maybe some people who were perceptive would have picked up on it. But he really offered some foreshadowing of how he was going to mail it in from that point on. He said, I can't believe I just went through 8 weeks of this to make 1/10 of my salary. 1/10 in 8 weeks. And he never busted his ass again. He had so much natural talent, and he rhymed off 50-goal seasons and 60-goal seasons, but he never gave a crap again after 94 like he did in the 94 playoffs when he went balls to the wall, man.
Wow.
And that's my own opinion, and he deserves every accolade. And he was just grease lightning on ice, right? I mean, he was just freaking grease lightning. Him and McDavid on the same line would be pretty special. Having Mario addition to them would be pretty cool. Obviously, Connor would have to probably defer to Mario and shift over on the wing, right? So,
if not,
I'm sure he can accommodate him.
Yeah. I think he would defer maybe. If not, Lemieux would just go grab the puck from him.
Exactly. I don't know what the hell you do in a case like that. That's the thing about the dream lines, right? You can have so much fun with that. I mean, it's insane when you think about it. Because the one thing we should never do is forget about the past, because those guys, peer to peer, did what they did. Like Rocket Richard. I mean, why do you think he got the nickname? Do you think because he was slow? I mean, nobody had seen anybody like him with his speed. I mean, Howie Morenz, but Morenz died in 37. He was making a comeback, kind of, but he was fast as hell. Rocket, they said, was every bit as faster. Who knows? But I mean, Howie Morenz was a Stratford streak. Rocket Richard was the Rocket, right? So these guys had speed to burn as well, man. And you make Rocket Richard born in 1987, like Sidney Crosby, or 1961, like Wayne Gretzky, and you got a guy growing up with today's, under their conditions, equipment and whatever, training, coaching,
and there was a reason that Pavel Bure was called the Russian Rocket, because they felt much the same, so they called him the Russian. Right?
That would have been sacrilegious for them to hang the Rocket on him, and still a lot of guys still refer to him as the Rocket, and that's fine. At the end of the day.
I could never do that. I could never do that. I think if you're a purist of hockey, one's the Rocket and the other is, the Pocket Rocket, and then you got the Russian Rocket, and that's it. Well, hey, we so much appreciated, man, being with us today. Sorry, go ahead, Pavel, when it's your final wrap.
For sure, yeah, we'll wrap up. So I have we have a few more questions left, but you indicated your son, I believe, played hockey and you coached a bit. What position does he play, if you want to share? And how is that experience like coaching him and just the team and the dynamics there?
Yeah, it was absolutely second to none. I'll tell you, it was such a rush. I coached him from IP. I took him on his first lap of the rink, and we never played at a high level. You know, he never made AAA or anything like that. We were in the lower ranks, but we played some rep, and wherever we had a motto, and whatever team he made in tryouts, that's the team I coached. Because I'm very lucky. I'll say that all the association that I played in as well. My son played in the exact same association, and everybody knows me out here. And it was said, oh, hey, we're gonna get Liam Maguire to coach. Liam Maguire's gonna be the coach. So I kind of had my pick. You know, I was very, very fortunate. But I don't think that would have mattered year to year if I had been an idiot. I'd like to think I wasn't. I'd like to think I was a good coach and I was good for the kids. I just tried to instill discipline, a sense of pride, play for the sweater, play for each other, and don't be selfish and show up at practice. Man, I drove that. I drove that. Show up at practice, and I remember one year I told the kids, I said, you know why we're going to win the league this year? We're going to be the best passing team. You know, drive you guys crazy in practice with passing drills, but I always made sure we took a few minutes at the end of every practice as well for some fun stuff. And I did that right into minor midget, you know, right until they were 15 years old. It started to, I knew that would have been a push at 16 or 17 in major midget, but I took that from 5 right till they were about 15 or 16. Fun stuff at the end of practice. And I loved it, man. I loved working on the drills. I loved going out there and my assistant coaches. I loved the tryouts. I love going to the games. I would think about a big game all day, just like when I was playing. My son, I'd get him from school. He'd come home from school, get off the bus. I'd say, hey, you ready to go tonight? He says, oh, yeah, Dad, can't wait. And away we go, you know. It was just the best. And sometimes it was an hour and a half drive, right, to the rink.
Wow.
And I always usually had a couple kids with me. And away we went. And it was the greatest memories, absolute greatest. I'm very, very thankful. And we won a ton. You know, very fortunate that we won a lot of games. We won leagues. We won some championships. We won some tournaments. Not them all. We had some tough losses too.
Yeah.
There were some tears. But and tournaments. The tournaments, you know, getting on the big bus, going to the States is incredible. You go down there, you get in the hotel and get everybody, all the parents, everybody's excited. Who are we playing? You're playing all these teams from all over. You're never going to see. And these kids are 10 and 12. And they're going out there just busting their ass. And it's just amazing. Amazing experience. It's our winter national sport. It's the greatest sport. I love it still. And coaching my son was just phenomenal.
Awesome. Well, it seems like on our show, people usually get promoted. So if anyone in the NHL, albeit maybe the WHL, CHL, OHL is listening, maybe you'll get a call after this show and they'll be offering you a head coaching position because it seems like you know what's up and you've got a passion for it.
We don't get promotions ourselves, but we help everyone else. Yeah, no, I mean, the very reason, everyone, if you're watching us here today, I just want to kind of quick spin out to you guys here. So every Wednesday night we run 7 p.m. live. You can also follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. Also over on the Sports Empire Network where they have a host of other podcasts, but we are their hockey. So, for example, tonight we have Liam Maguire who is on. By the way, he does not play baseball, not that Maguire. He's not on steroids that we know, but you can follow him on LinkedIn. He's also on Facebook. Follow him on Twitter. You want to talk hockey, he definitely will do it on Twitter. That's the place to be. Yeah, you're the very reason that we even created the show Two Guys in Hockey Talk is because the love and the passion for the game. It's not just about NHL. It's also about junior. It's about Pee Wee. It's about Bantam. It's about playing street hockey, for God's sake. It's about getting on the pond. It's about the love of the sport itself, and it makes it so magnificent. So thanks so much for joining us here tonight. So just before you go, we'll get you to hang on. I just want to bring a quick notice here for everybody that's been following here tonight. So we were talking with Zill earlier here. So she said that she's down in the Coachella Valley trucking tonight, but she did get me some information because she was down. She's taking in all the AHL. I think this weekend she's going to Abbotsford, taking out the AHL. She was already down and saw the Roadrunners. We'll talk about that another time, but she was down in Vegas. So I just wanted to pull up. So she was taking some shots for us so that you could kind of see. And she was saying that it was kind of cool because this is Elias Pettersson's mom that was just down over by her. She didn't know until the end. And so she didn't really get a chance to talk. Beautiful T-Mobile Arena. But before I do that, why don't I show you a few clips that she ran for us here before we get ready to go?
Vegas,
It looks like it's a pretty exciting arena. We'll jump ahead. You can see in the arena, they definitely have a lot going on. One of the fights.
Oh boy.
Now, just so you guys know, that was when she went to Vegas and the Canucks whooped the Vegas Golden Knights that night. So could you, with us going out, tell us something about the Vegas Golden Knights that will stand out in history?
Well, making the final the first year is pretty big. I mean, that's just unfreaking believable, that first season, how McPhee and company just fleeced so many GMs and hit so many home runs. I don't know William Karlsson that first season, what he had done previously, and for him, what he did that first year is unfreaking believable, and it'll stand the test of time. And I got to know Turkey a little bit there, Gerard Gallant, and feel bad for him, because he hasn't got his name on a cup, but he's a hell of a guy, and he's a PEI native, and I'm a big fan of his family, and their head coach right now, Bruce Cassidy, is a very good friend of mine and has been for a long, long time. He won a Memorial Cup here in Ottawa with the 67s in 1984. He was part of their D corps. He was unbelievable, and he blew his knee out playing ball hockey. Otherwise, he would have had a stellar NHL career.
Wow.
And that's why he was up and down like a yo-yo as a player in the mid to late 80s and before he retired and got into coaching. So he's a current head coach of Vegas, and I think obviously they got fleeced pretty badly on the Pacioretty deal in Montreal. Thank you very much. The Habs fans were pretty happy with Suzuki, and they enjoyed Tatar when he was there too. But I mean, let's be honest. Vegas is going to be known for a long time unless they go on to win a cup for that first season. And you got to go back to the Montreal Maroons, who came in 24 and won a cup in 26, and the Rangers came in 26 and won a cup in 1928 as sort of the previous record holders of making a final. Vegas, unfortunately, didn't complete the deal, but still pretty freaking impressive, very impressive.
Yeah. Quick question: didn't St. Louis, when they came in 67, 68, didn't they go to the final?
They went to 3 straight finals.
Yeah.
A little bit different. I mean, all they had to do was win the West, right? But, I mean, still, can't take it away from them. That's a great point. And they made 3 straight finals. Unfortunately, they never won a game. They lost 4 straight all 3 years. But, one of the years to Montreal, they lost 4 straight, and all 4 games were by 1 goal, and 2 of them were in overtime. They weren't going to win the series anyway. But, I mean, that's a great point. Yeah, they went to the final their first year as well.
Always a bridesmaid, never a bride, eh?
Yeah, although the Blues finally got her done.
Well, hey, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So again, if you guys want to follow #1 NHL historian, you need to check out Liam Maguire. He's been on our show here tonight. Go back, check it out, share, follow, subscribe, and also you can connect with him for most of your hockey on Twitter. that would be a great place to be able to check things out. So again, thanks. It's been a ring a ding dong dandy, as Ed Whalen would have said, and we definitely have appreciated it. So Pavel, any last thought?
Nope. Thank you so much. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and you can call us when you got that head coaching job, whichever team it is. But no, thank you again, and all the best to where you are, and thanks to everyone for tuning in tonight. It's been a pleasure.
All right, guys.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
In the meantime and in between time,
keep your sticks on the ice. Stay safe.
Cheers.